Hello again, Steve here with a few words on what I'm going to call the importance of being ourselves. I was reading here in this book by Nietzsche, excerpts from different books from Nietzsche. Talks about here how, it's easy enough for us to get off on the path of what other people want us to do. And I'll just read a little bit of it to see if it makes any sense here. No one can build thee the bridge over which thou must cross the river of life, save thyself alone. There are paths and bridges and demigods without number that will gladly carry thee over, but only at a price of thine own self. There is in the world one road whereupon none may go except thou. Ask not whither it leads, but go forward. Who was it that spake that true word? A man has never risen higher than when he knoweth not whither his road may lead him. I think that's an important old excerpt because how often do we just say to ourselves, why wasn't I just myself? And how often do we hear wise people once in a while say, just be yourself? And I think these demigods are everywhere, and probably the worst of the bunch are our parents. Bless them, as the efforts they gave and all and so on. But and also just society. Society is just basically code word for scared shitless of everybody, and I think that's why we don't want to be ourselves. We're just scared shitless of being ourselves. And I remember when the kids were small, my daughter, people saying that when she was in kindergarten, for example, or preschool, we were told to take her out of there and it was suggested that we go and have her checked out for something. And I just never bought that bullshit. She was just being a kid. She wouldn't sit down. What else? Come on. She's like 4 years old. Of course she doesn't want to sit down. If she wanted to sit down, I'd be worried, actually. And she's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant. And same with my son. When he was a certain age, he was doing behaviors that most people think are for a lot younger kids. And it was suggested that maybe he shouldn't be doing that. And I never listened. Call me a renegade. I never listened. Just let them be and encourage them. And, if I have shown them a different bridge that wasn't theirs, I would have just been a demigod. And I was a demigod at times, or somebody who was trying to teach them into something. But I think looking at the way we treat kids is a good example of how we treat ourselves. Because if we're not in the same way that we're trying to make the kids into something else that they're not, by putting them in public school, for example. How many kids actually want to go to public school? Maybe they come to enjoy it, but they didn't think about it. It's us who put them in there. We think that somehow they have to be educated. They never wanted it right away, right? As an example. But we do the same thing to ourselves, don't we? We constantly want to craft ourselves in a certain way to fit some sort of a public relations viewpoint. We'll fart, away from the crowd, but not with the crowd, and so on. Maybe there's good other reasons for that. But a lot of things that we do, we put on a public face and a private face. We don't want to be seen for who we are. We're ashamed of ourselves, in a way. And there's something really precious, I think, about seeing people who are themselves. this book about Keith Richards here, it's not necessarily a lifestyle for everybody, but it was his lifestyle. And it's really interesting listening to the way the guy just really was, in a way, in his own way, was just fascinated with life. Just fascinated with life and the details of life and the detail he put into it. He talked about how one time he was making these pairs, he'd spend hours on hours with his sewing needle and thread making his own pants, taking 4 pairs of sailor pants and cutting the leg in half and sewing a piece of leather and sewing another leg a different color onto it and so on. I mean, who would do that except Keith Richards? Of course, and while being spun out on, I don't know, acid or something. But it's, which once again is not to be something to be celebrated. But he was himself all the way and still is. So the more I think we can live the way we were, because it seems like, we're all different, right? So why would we want to live the same lifestyles? It doesn't make any sense. We've been trained to. Society's more efficient. It's good to have a bunch of worker bees for society. But society, in most ways that I see, is the antithesis of individuality. It's the antithesis of ourselves, because we're not society. Right? Society is something we've made up. It's a conformity structure and conformity structure, as I see it. So, I don't know. Improving the quality of our lives, I think, and I give a vote for that, being ourselves. I think that improves the quality of our lives in the long run. Uncomfortable in the beginning, for sure, but in the long run, we get to appreciate it, and others get to appreciate it. And in the end, we're true to ourselves. So, great chatting again. Steve here. Talk again.